will increase relative to your earnings potential. Now, if you want hemorrhage, deflation effectively in your dollars, you're probably going to get it through a contraction of economic activity very rapidly, similar to what we saw in 2008. And it's going to be very, very costly. So just be very, very aware of interest, and there are examples of exorbitant, abusive interest costs that have been discussed here. And frankly, there are many abhorrent banking practices that we can talk about later. One issue you mentioned, the outstanding derivatives. The $750 trillion figure is a notional figure, and so a lot of those amounts are swapped off against each other. Even in that context, the extreme amount of derivatives, specifically credit default swaps, I personally don't believe serve much of a functional use. It's often articulated that they are risk management mechanisms, but in a way, they're mostly trading mechanisms. And so from an economic or utilitarian perspective, they should either be extremely limited or they should be regulated similar to the way that insurance is regulated, because they do, in essence, create a potential for systemic risk. And that's a whole other issue, but we can go offline to discuss systemic risk.
And sir, your question, please.
Okay. It's going to be a relatively quick question. I've got two friends. One is the ex-vice president for a major Canadian bank, VP of risk management. He's very good in math. He's got an advanced degree. He came to the point where the PhDs, he had to hire PhDs because he doesn't understand the math of what they're doing. And if he doesn't understand the math, the bank management doesn't understand the math of what's going on. Second friend is an appraisal fellow. He appraises houses, commercial buildings, this kind of thing. He has two enemies. One is the people who are going to having their properties appraised. They want a higher valuation. And the second group of people who really hate him are the bank loan officers who want a really high appraisal so they can rate the mortgage, rate the loan, and get their numbers. So, one question, quick yes or no answer. The five of you up there, do you see any chance of what we're talking about, any of the elements of what we're talking about, modifying the banking system or having an open door to the banking system, given that level of confusion and desperation that exists in the banking system, do you see them being able to make any changes whatsoever to move toward what we're talking about, to start at the fellow on the end, yes or no?
Maybe. It depends what area you're talking about the bank. It depends if you're talking about the commercial bank, the sales and trading.
The reality is change always happens. Nothing is fixed. What that change is, all we can do is hope for that this crisis, it accelerates the rate of change, accelerates it in a more positive direction.
What I would say is that I think the future is with decentralization. The future, therefore, if it's with decentralization, is with decentralized banks. There are many, many decentralized banks. The Huffington Post campaign to get people to move their money in the United States from the big global banks to the more smaller banks, local community development banks, has already led in 18 months to 10 million accounts apparently being shifted. So actually people are beginning to vote with their feet. These organizations who are local and up close to the businesses and the farmers and the energy projects, they can redevelop relationship banking with this fee-based system. That's what we need. But we need to walk the talk. It's already beginning to happen, but there's no convergence of the pieces of the jigsaw so that actually we can bring the fragments together so you can see the future. At the moment, people are focusing on one part of the jigsaw and they're fetishizing that. But actually the system is complex and has to have the pieces fit together. So there are many alternatives. Those alternatives often are complementary within a convivial technology of money as a commons.
The answer to the question is you won't get change from the inside, and you've got to go follow past decentralization, but you've got to get out of the institutions into the people. It's people power that creates credit, and to get people power creating credit, you need to get credit insurance, and you need a reference point of value, which is the retail value of renewable energy which they can produce on their own roofs. You don't want energy-backed currency, but you want a reference unit of value which citizens at the local level can define and create their own credit and get it insured. So you force change by disruptive technology through mobile phone banking, which is decentralized to individuals.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to abuse my position as chair and ask all the panelists a question to close the session. And we've kind of covered this already, but I invite you to get into your time machine and join me in 2022 here in Split for the 10th International Social Transformation Conference. And what does the currency world look like in 10 years? What sort of currencies have we got? Do we still have central banks? Are there energy-backed currencies? And if you think there's a particular defining moment that would have helped us through that transformation, what do you think that might be?
I think it'll follow in parallel with the renewable energy as we get more photovoltaic and wind online. There will still be central banks. The aspect of, what we talked about is if there is an element that is an asset that is contained, it'll probably be in the form of a claim rather than physical ownership of a bank of let's say power plants or oil or natural gas, such that it's something that they can build upon, as I spoke before.
There will be a proliferation of different stores of value, whether they're currencies, online points, digital forms. There will be an evolution. We're most likely going to have central banks. So many of the forms will exist that we see today, and you'll see complementary evolution from other forms of value.
I think a critical question is how do we, whether this will work or not, but this is the critical question. How do we link the macroeconomic reforms to the microeconomic reforms? We know at the micro level we need decentralized institutions. We know at the macro level that we need public social partnerships. So what is the relationship between public banking, for example, and the local cooperative banking? How do we get that relationship win-win? Richard Werner has done a paper in February for green quantitative easing, which is actually creating money that actually can then be spent into the economy for the transformation from the carbon economy to the solar economy. I think that's a very interesting way to start at the macroeconomic level to target it directly through localized financial institutions that are accountable and democratic to making the green economy work for everybody in different regions across the country.
In 10 years' time, we won't have central banking. There will be a financial crisis, and the centralized system will freeze up, and people will look for alternatives. And I look to Marissa from Brazil here, whose bank would have set up decentralized banking to provide an example to the world how central banks can put themselves out of business by facilitating social money, people-created money, and that'll provide leadership to the rest of the world. When a crisis comes, they say, we want a Brazilian model and a people-powered finance.
Thank you. So a variety of different views of the future, but we all seem to agree that it will not be like the present, which has got to be a good thing. So one final thing, Margaret would just like to tell you about two books that are on sale for a very special price outside.
I just wanted to let you know the books have arrived from the UK. There are two books that came out. This came out on the 5th of July. That's the People Money book that I referred to yesterday, that I co-authored with Bernard Lietaer and John Rogers. And this is Money and Sustainability, the Missing Link, a report from the Club of Rome EU chapter to Finance Watch and the World Business Academy. And that is basically the summary of the experience of Bernard Lietaer over the last 20 years with some authors who have specialized in various other complementary currencies like Stefan Bullhuber, who is in health currencies, Sally Görner, who is on this, what is it called? What I showed last yesterday in the last picture, the the ecology of money based on the research of sustainability and efficiency versus, my God, efficiency versus what? Resilience, exactly. Sorry. And anyway, so you can buy these books. I don't want to learn about this. This one, the Money and Sustainability, is £12. The other one is £10, People Money, which is exactly half the price you would pay in any bookstore. The publisher paid the transport costs, and I paid for the 50 books. So if you need a receipt, I can give you a receipt as well. So there are 50 books outside, and I can take a few home, but hopefully not all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. So, yes, thanks. I'd just like to invite you to thank all of our panelists for their contributions. You can use up your pound sterling while it still exists on buying Margaret's books, and it is now 12:30, lunchtime. We'll reconvene at 1:30. I would ask you to please be here slightly before 1:30 so we can start the afternoon session on time. Thank you.